Hello, this is Mark Holmes from Via Satellite for another of our Thursday morning conversations. And this time we've got something a little bit different for you. We've got one of our top members of our Cybersat Advisory Board, Bob Gourley, who's the CTO of OODA LLC. Bob, before we talk about some cybersecurity stuff, we've all been in lockdown for a few weeks now. How's life in lockdown? How's the family doing? What have you as a family been doing to stay sane and healthy?
Well, thanks for asking, because frankly, these are trying times for everybody. And for those who've not been directly touched by the virus, there are those that have been touched because of the economic situation and the layoffs and the stress there, or those that have just been touched because of empathy for others. And so it's really affecting everybody globally, it seems. I feel very blessed with that context in mind to say that we haven't had the personal infections in our family, and we hope to keep it that way. And I hope to keep a good attitude and keep smiling. And I feel like we'll all do the best we can. I also feel like there's a lot of lessons for all of humanity in this, things that we as individuals should have done differently, and our local government should have done differently, our state governments, our federal governments, and the globe as a whole should have done differently. So that's a long way of saying I feel very thankful for my personal situation, but empathetic for the globe.
Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the things we've been doing is we've been asking, we've had a lot of conversations with C-suite executives of the satellite industry. So we've been having some fun and finding out what sort of movies, dramas they've been watching. So any recommendations in terms of good dramas you've been watching while in lockdown, or movies that you would recommend?
You know, there's a lot out there, and I really love history, and so things that have a historical kind of flavor or can introduce you to old characters is always a favorite of mine. But I'm also a sci-fi buff, and I love watching sci-fi. And there's been now a third season of Westworld out on HBO, and I recently finished all of that. And I have to tell you, I was disappointed. I'm not sure if I should recommend it to anybody or not.
Oh.
And then another was Altered Carbon, which is from a wonderful sci-fi book that really gets you thinking about the potential future for humanity if you can back up a person's memories into a chip or a disk. And the first season was just incredible. The second season was like, huh? So I got to tell you, I really am hungry for more sci-fi to keep thinking about the future. And if you have any insights there, I'd love to hear it. One other thing about Westworld season 3, although the plot got a little predictable, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody, the backdrop of the modern city was wonderful. It really fuels the imagination of what it could be. And just to give you kind of the bottom line conclusion, that backdrop of a modern city was actually Singapore. It exists today.
Why am I not surprised that you like sci-fi? I probably should have seen that a little bit coming. What sort of music do you like, Bob? What sort of things do you like to listen to? Are you a music fan? And
well, I have an eclectic music taste, and when I'm working, maybe there'll just be something on in the background that might be classical. When I'm out for a walk, I like to be able to pick depending on my mood. And so I select from iTunes. And once you're connected to iTunes on their great family plan, you really have access to any music that's ever been created by humanity at any time. Mm-hmm. So I'll select based on mood and just get into whatever I feel like getting into.
So give me a band, give me an artist that's one of your favorites. So,
just the Beatles are the classic. I love the extensive portfolio of material they have done. So depending on what mood you're in, there's always something for you there. Bon Jovi is brilliant, genius, lyrics and music and beat. It's incredible. Those are two.
Before we go on, so what's your favorite Bon Jovi song? Do you like one or two of the older classics, or do you
Well, remember, I'm a cybersecurity guy, so Living on a Prayer.
It's a great song. I mean, that was one of the first albums I ever had. I think I was 10 years old when Slippery When Wet came out.
Yeah.
And, I had that on cassette. So it brings back some good memories. I always remember that one. I saw them twice in concert as well back in the
Oh, really?
early 1990s as well.
And you said cassette. I haven't heard that word in quite a while.
The funny thing is, when I saw them in concert, it was just after the grunge period of like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and they really were not, I wouldn't say, I mean, they were still popular, but they were not playing big arenas or stadiums at that point. And I saw them in, actually, ironically, in a relatively small venue in Maryland, I think, in the early 90s. So I do remember that when they were sort of launching their comeback, and yeah, that was I've a few of their albums, so good choice.
I mentioned cybersecurity and living on a prayer, and I was just exchanging comments via Twitter with a friend of mine, Phil Redinger, who runs the Global Cyber Alliance. He posted his favorite songs and just wanted to start a little fun conversation and said, "These are the greatest, period." And he said, "What are yours?" And I just replied and said, as a cybersecurity guy, I like the Junkie XL remix of Elvis Presley, A Little Less Conversation.
Okay.
Because we cyber guys have been talking about this stuff forever. How about a little action now?
Well, I mean, you've given me the perfect segue into talking about cybersecurity. We, as a lot of you know, we were going to be doing an event this May in Los Angeles called CybersatCon, which obviously was unfortunately has had to been postponed for 12 months because of the pandemic. But what we are excited to bring is we're going to be bringing our first ever virtual event in cybersecurity. We're called Cybersat Week. And what we're doing with this event is we're going to be putting on content on every single day, looking at different aspects, linking cybersecurity and satellites, looking at issues like supply chain, new space, also looking at software-defined satellites. We're going to have a wide range of speakers. Bob is going to be one of them, and we're super delighted because Bob has been a big part of what we've been doing on Cybersat over the last few years. And I hope you don't mind me calling you this, but Bob really is the definition of a cybersecurity influencer, and we're really pleased to have him working not just with us, but with also the satellite community. And we're really pleased to have you back again for Cybersat Week in June. Bob, I mean, we launched that event 3 years ago. We got a lot of publicity. You know, where do we see the whole cybersecurity satellites as of today? And also, probably more personally, with the whole COVID-19, do you think this is really going to affect how satellite and space companies do cybersecurity?
Mm-hmm. I do. And first, I want to say COVID-19 has taught us something new about cybersecurity. Even folks like me who've been trying to study this for decades now, I want to get back to your previous CybersatCom, where we had the NASA CIO in a discussion. Every time you pull these thought leaders together, I learn. And I thought it was an incredible presentation on NASA and these wonderful, exciting missions that humanity is really teaming together on to pursue going to the moon, for example. And I'll get back to COVID in just a second.
Yeah.
And I remember entering into a discussion with the CIO about the cybersecurity of NASA's Project Artemis. And to paraphrase her response, it was essentially, look, this is the brotherhood of mankind going to the moon. Who would want to attack that? Now, keep that in mind as we think through what's happening with COVID today. Since late November, December, the world has been waking up to a virus problem. Declared a pandemic on 13 March, I think. So that's when things really started getting serious. And a lot of us are hopeful, like me. I was maybe a little naive, and I thought, you know what? Even the cyber criminals wouldn't dare try to interfere with, fixing this pandemic. I was wrong. They just escalated their game. They started attacking more and more and more. They were doing DDoS attacks against organizations that are trying to find a cure, trying to find a vaccine. They're using traditional fraud and cyber fraud and ransomware. It's escalating. So here's the lesson I learned. These criminals and hackers and nation states have really revealed their true nature. They are in it for malicious purposes. And if they're in it during a pandemic, they will always be in it. And this is a key message I think that all of the space and satellite companies need to understand. The attackers are always going to be there persistently. They'll never stop. And we always have to keep raising our game. We can do that smartly, efficiently, not very expensively, but we have to stay agile. Don't ever think you can do a cybersecurity checklist and be compliant with some regime and then not have to worry about security, because the attackers have proven to us in this COVID pandemic that they are malicious and evil and will never stop. Sorry, was that too much of a rant?
No. I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, one of the things we're seeing, I mean, with space companies and even, any companies really, is that there's going to be a more sort of dispersed workforce than ever before. People are working more remotely. For sort of, new space companies who have, relatively small staffs, but are dispersing because they're working from home. Is the security threats going to be heightened, and other threat vectors going to change for those types of companies?
Yeah, that's a very good point. There's another thing that the hackers quickly adopted to is the fact that so many of us are working in a distributed way, and the attack surface has changed. And for the many companies in the satellite industry, their attack model has changed. Their threat model has changed. So they need to understand they have to protect that wider attack surface. So a key point on that is there are things they can do for very low cost to raise their defenses and mitigate a lot of these risks. There's a concept called the software-defined perimeter, which came out of government but was adopted as a commercial best practice and has been championed by this nonprofit group, the Cloud Security Alliance. That software-defined perimeter can really help protect a distributed workforce. And it's something I recommend every satellite company look into.
Mm-hmm. No, this is really interesting. And one of the other big topics on our advisory board calls, I know you've been a part of them, and we've had some great conversations. We have a fantastic advisory board for CyberSat, has been issues regarding supply chain. And that seems to be something that's become particularly as it relates to the space sector as well. And just to get your thoughts on that.
Mm-hmm. So supply chain is now, we've all realized, is a huge issue. And cybersecurity professionals have been looking at this for a long time, but now globally, there's going to be a big restructuring. More and more countries are realizing that they have to have a trusted supply chain and know where everything came from and be able to depend on that coming no matter what. Even in a pandemic, you need to be able to depend on your supply chain. So there's going to be changes in where things are manufactured and how hardware is assembled and treated. And there's going to be changes to software and where software is developed and how you mitigate risk to software. And those changes are underway right now. And I think in the satellite world, there's still a huge need for coalitions of countries to get things into space. This is complicated stuff. And I think the coalitions of countries are going to build trust amongst themselves. And we may see a grouping of open Western style trusted companies that are building their satellite programs together in a more trusted way, where the supply chain is only in places where there is a rule of law and you can expect things to be delivered the way they were promised.
If we could go to our virtual CyberSat Week event in June, can you give us an idea what you think might be the key topic or one of the key learnings that might come out of that event? We've got a great range of speakers: IBM, NVIDIA, yourself, Airbus, Spire, Planet, Telesat. So if there's one thing that might come out of that week, what do you think might come out of that week?
Well, we started the conversation talking about movies and fun and sci-fi and also music. And, all of that speaks to creativity. And I really think all these companies you just mentioned are full of extremely creative builders of new capability. and I can't wait to hear what they have to say. What's coming in the near future, just 6 months or a year from now, in terms of real capability? That's always the exciting part for me. And then how do we help defend that and protect it? So I also believe threat models should be a big topic. How does a company understand the threat in a way that is actionable to them and use it to train their workforce and educate their executive leadership teams? So I think threat models will be a key one. Another technology topic that we hit on last year pretty well was quantum security. And I really hope that remains a theme, because it's a great way to share encryption keys if you do this right. Yeah. And also, it's a great way to protect your data from the future of quantum computers.
Okay, and just one final question. I mean, we'll go back to the impact of COVID on cybersecurity. I mean, you talk to a lot of cybersecurity influencers every single day. In terms of the chatter, can you give us maybe one thing that has been coming out of these conversations that, in the way that maybe cybersecurity will change forever because of the pandemic?
I mentioned earlier a software-defined perimeter as a way to reduce an attack surface. There's really a huge push for that right now, where CIOs and CTOs are saying, let's do that. Let's do it now. So that's a change. And I think another change is, as we went to a distributed workforce, some people thought, all right, that's temporary, they'll come back soon. That might be permanent. What if the distributed workforce is forever? Because a lot of us are loving this and we're getting stuff done. And companies and government organizations want to continue to attract the very best possible people. So you're going to need to accommodate them. So security for the home workforce is going to be a big mega trend.
Fantastic. Well, Bob, it's been an absolute pleasure. For those of you who want to hear more of Bob speak, and trust me, it's definitely worth it. Bob will be one of our speakers at Cybersat Week, our first virtual event for Cybersat, which takes place between June 8th and June 12th. We've got a number of great speakers there. I also have to say, Bob, I think you have the best backdrop so far for a Thursday morning conversation. Makes me feel quite jealous, because my garage is completely not tooled compared to yours. So that's a great backdrop you have there, and it's always a pleasure. We've enjoyed working with you, Bob, and you've helped us build Cybersat over the last 3 or 4 years. It's great to have someone like you involved and talking and sharing knowledge and information with the satellite community. So thank you again for all that you've brought to Cybersat. Wish you and your family safe health and safe times over this period. And thank you for making time to talk to us today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks.